Something I see posted frequently on social media and often run into when I talk to students is students who care about their parents and want to respect their parents, but are sort of tied up in parental expectations. And so the question sort of goes like this, like, my parents have these strange expectations for me, or different expectations, or I think unreasonable expectations, and how do I sort out how to deal with that, but also be an adult? Like, when do I know whether to listen to my parents, and when do I figure out how to be my own person and make my own decisions? And I have kind of an interesting story of that myself from my own experience growing up. When I was growing up, my dad was a forester and worked outside and did all those things. And so as I was growing up, I just had this thought that I should be a forest ranger or a forester or do something like that. And my dad would say things like, well, you don't want to be a forest ranger because then you have to deal with the public, you have to deal with people. And so I was kind of looking for all those jobs you didn't have to deal with people. And I actually said that out loud one time. My dad said, wait a second, what are you talking about? He said, that's what I don't want to do. That's not you. You need to deal with people. You need to look for jobs that have you in connection with people and all those kinds of things. And what was interesting is that was a parental expectation that hadn't actually been voiced, but that I had picked up, that I thought was the expectation, and it was really having a major influence on my thinking and the way I was looking at things. And in that case, all it took was a little conversation, and my dad was wise enough to say, no, that's me, not you. You've got something different. And that released me to go a whole different direction and ultimately had a major impact in my life. But what if you haven't been able to have that conversation? Or maybe you have, and you still have this kind of conflict going on. So the first thing is maybe to step back and keep this in mind, that no matter how strange it seems, your parents have your best interests in mind. And just by virtue of the fact they've been alive longer than you have, they have some more wisdom and experience than you do. So every time you start running against those expectations, the first thing you gotta do is stop and remember, hey, they want the best for me, and what do they know that I don't? The second thing to consider is that give your parents some grace. You know, you might be the oldest child, and this might be the first time your parents have had to figure out how to deal with these kinds of situations. Or you might be the youngest child, and they might be exhausted about dealing with all these situations with your older siblings. Or you might be the middle child, and give them a break, they gotta deal with your older and younger siblings. And so in all those situations, keep in mind that your parents are trying to figure some of this stuff out too, and so give them a little grace. The third thing to keep in mind is that there's a long game here. What seems really important to you at 18 or 19 or whatever age you are, probably isn't that important in the long run. But what is really important is the relationship you have with your parents. Right now, that can be a little rocky and a little tense. 10 years from now, it may be one of the most valuable relationships in your life. But let's say that you've done all those things and you still have some pretty unreasonable expectations that just don't make sense. You've tried to talk it out and it's just not happening. So these last three things to keep in mind. First, always be respectful and always come from a position of respect. You want to preserve this relationship no matter what the outcome is. Secondly, make sure you're seeking counsel from other wise adults in your life who have the same kind of experience as your parents. You don't want to make a decision that runs completely counter to your parents' opinions without some outside wisdom perspective from somebody who has a little more experience on the life spectrum than you do. And then finally, in the end, keep this in mind. When you pass 18, when you're 19, 20, ultimately you're responsible for you, your actions, and your future. And eventually you're going to have to be in a position where you make the decisions and you make the final decision and take responsibility for your life.
So what are the expectations that you struggle with the most with your parents? What is it that you have the most difficulty with when it comes to living up to your parents' expectations? Is it understanding what they are? Is it hitting a high standard that you think is unreasonably high? Or is it striving to meet the standard that you think is correct, but you're having trouble getting to? Share with us in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe if you like these videos, like it if you liked it, and remember, any comment that you put in, either the Facebook comments or down below here on YouTube, helps us tremendously in making these videos better for the future. Thanks.